You're listening to Paul G's Corner, where history proves that saying it can't happen here usually means it already did. So we've all watched enough crime television to recognize this device immediately. The buried alive clock, the confined space, the rescue that comes down to inches and minutes. And it usually feels like something a writer just invented to force your pulse to cooperate. But because on July 15th of 1976, 26 children would disappear beneath California soil. Not in fiction, not on a soundstage, but on a rural farm road outside Chowchilla, California. The children are thinking about summer, about cartoons waiting at home, about who will sit where on the ride back, unaware of how violently the afternoon will bend. Irrigation lines tick beneath the hard sun with the kind of relaxed certainty that only repetition can produce. Vinyl seats warm against the backs of legs and windows cracked just enough to let in the heat. In Chowchilla, during the summer of 1976, routine feels settled, something parents trust and children barely notice as they climb aboard expecting nothing more than another easy summer afternoon. That same afternoon, Frederick Woods IV stands on land his family owns, speaking the number $5 million over and over again, as if he's testing how it sounds in open air. James and Richard Schoenfeld listen, then repeat it themselves, and the figure is written on a small scrap of paper that stays on the table long after the conversation should have moved on. They speak plainly about kidnapping a bus full of children, about air supply, on how ransom will be delivered, about how long before anyone understands what has happened. One of them runs the numbers twice and arrives at a different total, then laughs it off, and as a math error no one bothers to correct. And when someone asks what happens if a child refuses to climb down into the van, well, the room goes quiet briefly. Woods answers that they will comply because they always do. They're not cornered by debt, yet they linger on the number on the scrap of paper longer than necessary, turning it over in conversation without anyone once suggesting a smaller one. Or should they even? In a memory. Later, at a quarry carved by machines that understand force, the plan moves from paper to practice. The three men stand in the hollow of a moving van and discuss airflow, battery life, mattress placement, and the logistics of holding 27 people long enough to demand payment. The motor is tested repeatedly until the hum steadies into something that sounds dependable, and when the vibration no longer wavers, there is a quiet exchange of looks that says they believe they have solved the hardest variable. They talk about how children will comply, about air moving through pipes, about ransom arriving before anyone panics, about each element being accounted for. And no one mentions how much soil weighs in the July heat, or how long air lasts once it stops moving. At a kitchen table not far from the route, a mother glances at the clock without urgency, estimating when the bus should crest the rise near her road. And in the school office, the transportation log lies open on a desk, fresh ink drying beside entries that require no second thought. And when a van cuts across the road, it looks like a minor obstruction to Ed at first. It's angled just enough to force the bus to slow. Instead, the doors fling open and shotguns enter the aisle in steady hands carried by men who speak without raising their voices. The children stand because authority, even whispered, has always been enough. Ed Ray rises last, scanning the bus once more before stepping into a future that has already shifted beneath him. The windows are covered quickly and the bus lurches forward without explanation. The sudden turn sharp enough to send a few children against the seat backs before anyone regains balance. The engine noise swells and directions become guesswork as asphalt gives way to gravel and the ride turns uneven. And Ed Ray moves down the aisle with one hand braced against the seats, steadying the younger children as the bus jolts, telling them to stay seated and keep their heads down while he tries to map the movement in his own mind. Five minutes become 10 at the bus stop, and the mother checks the road again. She walks to the kitchen wall phone and dials the school. The cord stretched across the counter, her voice carrying patience rather than panic, and the secretary consults the log and repeats reassurance that has always worked before, unaware that repetition is about to lose its authority. The open quarry sits underneath the sun as the school bus moves in. And when the van doors open, the interior reveals deliberate arrangement. Mattresses braced upright, water positioned within reach, snack boxes stacked with tidy precision, ventilation pipes rising towards a battery secured against moisture. And the three men shuffle in the children and Ed into what will hopefully be a temporary home. And in that moment, with fans steady and the inventory aligned, they stand over their work, staring at the stacked water and straight mattresses. Compliance settles in as confirmation, and the neat stacks and measured pacing sit in the dim light as though order alone could guarantee outcome. Then they slide the bolts, and darkness settles as they speak about the call they will soon make.
Choke the light, footsteps split the night, cold steel in his grin, war drums under skin.
Ed hears the soil begin striking the roof in scattered thuds, the weight now accumulating in layers that do not care what anyone intended. Air continues moving across foreheads and through hair, and for a suspended interval, the bunker performs exactly as designed. But inside, the warmth starts to build, so Ed Ray starts distributing water with controlled restraint, refusing to let panic outrun structure, while names are whispered so attendance survives burial. The children start to cough and spit grit. Ed starts to grind the dirt between his teeth as air becomes more difficult to breathe. And for a brief second, the room tilts toward surrender, until Ed Ray's determination to save the children rises, calming the room just with his presence. Above ground, the conspirators, finishing their work, walk back towards their vehicle, one of them glancing over his shoulder at the freshly covered ground before climbing in. And when the abandoned bus is found by the authorities, and the first radio call hisses, the air inside the sheriff's office tightens instantly. A deputy stands in the bus beside the vinyl cushions still warm from the afternoon and feels absence press inward with a force no manual prepared him for. And for an instant, he calculates the number 26 against the length of a shallow grave and hates himself for thinking it, because imagining that call to 26 families feels like crossing a line he doesn't want to cross. Radios crackle, roadblocks are ordered, supervisors escalate, and the word late gives way to missing with a speed that drains the room. In the sheriff's office, the phone rings, and when they answer it, The voice on the other end says $5 million. Yet it offers no coordinates and no mercy. Authorities discuss about assembling cash serial numbers in coordination with federal agencies against a quieter dread that time may already be collapsing somewhere unseen. Deputies spread across orchards and irrigation roads, scanning culverts, barns, and abandoned structures, each hour without discovery, tightening the fear that they are racing not against distance, but against breath. And beneath the packed earth, a tremor then travels through the housing and into the metal ribs of the van. The soil shifts against the roof, a sound changing subtly as pressure redistributes. Inside the van, the air is growing denser by the moment. Ed Ray makes the decision out loud that they will not wait. He orders mattresses stripped down from the walls and stacked beneath the rear doors, turning the narrow interior into a platform. Older boys are directed upward first, their shoulders braced, their backs pressed into wood and metal as they begin to hammer and shove in rhythm, not randomly, but together. The first coordinated drive yields resistance that feels immovable, soil packed tight above them. The effort becomes deliberate excavation, not panic, but work. Shoulders rising and falling, hands clawing at the seam where doors meet frame as dirt begins to sift downward in thin streams, forcing the van itself to shift against the weight that's pressing down. A final surge sends soil collapsing inward, and when a head finally breaks into the night air, the inhale that follows sounds less like relief and more like conquest. Hands reach downward in frantic coordination, and one by one, dust-coated children emerge from the earth that had sealed itself tight. When the call comes over the radio, fractured by static and half-heard at first, that the children are alive, no one repeats it immediately. A supervisor asks for confirmation, and then again, as if clarity itself might be fragile. Only after a second transmission confirms breathing children does relief move through the channels braced for catastrophe as units reroute towards Livermore with urgency that now carries hope rather than dread. And the suspicion narrows toward the quarry, and within days, deputies are knocking on doors. Frederick Woods and the Schoenfeld brothers are arrested, led from familiar ground in handcuffs while cameras record their faces and deputies close the car doors behind them. Woods had made it easy to track the rented moving van, and then the paperwork that led everything back to his father's quarry. The charges are not simple kidnapping, but kidnapping for ransom, which is more, I guess. 27 counts, all with the possibility of carrying life sentences. And in fact, they do get life. Because rather than risk a trial that would have exposed them to harsher penalties, all three eventually enter guilty pleas, accepting life imprisonment with the possibility of parole, a legal outcome that secures conviction but spares the courtroom spectacle some had, expected. All 26 children return home, and for a brief stretch, the town exhales. Yet what was endured does not simply dissolve. The story resists its own quiet burial as parole hearings reopen wounds and the men are released. 2012, 2015, 2022. As for the children that were almost buried, it seems that it didn't end for them, not really. Because at those parole hearings, the officers, the children, and Ed all had to revisit their burials over and over again until the men were finally rehabilitated and with no end in sight for the fear of elevators, confined spaces, and looking over your shoulder. Those families, the mothers, the fathers, the children, and the police will never forget that day in 1976. You've been listening to Paul G's Corner. If you made it all the way to the end of a story about 26 kids clawing their way out of a buried van, well, that probably says something about you. Not sure entirely what, but, it's not casual. So if you want to keep this particular habit alive, you can head over to paulgnewton.com and poke around in the store. Shirts, hoodies, and the usual collection of slightly uncomfortable reminders that history doesn't stay in textbooks. And every order buys another late night digging through case files instead of sleeping like a normal person. You can also rate and review the show, share it with someone who thinks crime tropes are invented in a writer's room, and help the algorithm understand that some of us prefer soil and court transcripts to cat videos. Because somewhere tonight, somebody is writing a script about being buried alive. And somewhere else, someone still remembers what that actually feels like.
Skirt, skirt.